All right. Well, I want to welcome everybody today or this evening or this morning, wherever you are in the world, to the STEM Leadership Alliance Summit webinar. This is a three-part series that we're going through, and today we're going to be discussing the anatomy of an integrated STEM unit with none other than David Graeber, who is going to be joining us. However, I just want to give a little bit of time to allow people to log in. So just give it another minute or two, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I want to welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is part of a three-part series with the STEM Leadership Alliance. And today we're going to talk about creating an integrative STEM unit. So we're going to start with this breakdown with none other than David Graeber, who's going to walk us through this process here. I do want to remind everyone that if you have any questions whatsoever during the webinar, don't hesitate to use the Q&A or the chat. I'll be monitoring that as we go. There's going to be a lot of resources and a lot of information that's shared, but we are recording this session, as well as I will be sending it out to everyone after the summit or after the conversation. And I will also be sending the PowerPoint too, so you'll have those additional resources. So right now, I'd like to go ahead, turn it over to David Graeber.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. Looking forward to being with you for the next hour or so. We're going to, as Kelly said, discuss the anatomy of an integrated STEM unit across the content areas today. So I'm going to share my screen. Everybody see that okay? Yes?
Yes, we can see it.
Beautiful. Okay, awesome. So for the day, we're going to take a look at sort of what our intention is, what makes us successful at the end of this session together. We're going to take a look at how standards and assessments lead into an integrated STEM unit of study. We're going to talk about the importance of feedback. I want to help realign sort of our definition of feedback a little bit and how much broader it can even be. We're going to talk about digging deeper into assessments. We're going to talk about the importance of project-based learning and beginning to develop your integrated STEM unit of study and nice steps and tools that'll help you launch and begin to plan together. So the first question I have for everybody is sort of, where are we now, right? We know for years in this work that we are exponentially seeing the transformation of our technologies, of the way kids learn, of the tools that we use to teach them with. When I say exponentially, I don't know if there's another word, but we're certainly moving even quicker than that, especially in the field of AI, which we're going to talk a little bit about in a few minutes. But what you want to do is think about when you gauge where you are in this work, is think about where the work is happening in your district, at the district level, but not only at the district level, but also at individual school levels. Sometimes individual schools move quicker than districts, so you want to sort of figure out the pulse. Where are we working with remote? Where's our technology with remote? Do a lot of our kids are they remote? Do they have the opportunity or ability to be remote? Should we have that available to them, et cetera? And the future of integrated STEM work and what that means for planning, and how planning really at the end of the day is the way in which we find ourselves the path into deeper learning for students around the STEM and the STEAM categories. So, as I said, today we're going to learn and understand what the critical components of an exemplar integrated STEM unit of study are. Okay, so what are the components? And when you walk out of here today, we want you to be able to use the session as a framework for your teams at the school level or even at the district level to be able to develop a unit of study that includes common assessments with alignment to STEM, NGSS, math, engineering, literacy standards, using artificial intelligence. But everything, and I mean everything, in the planning process, in the teaching process, in the running of a school, what makes a good school is these three pieces. When we look at these three pieces through the lens of good teaching practice, we have the center of how kids learn best. When we effectively plan for students, when we provide intellectual engagement, And when we as professional practitioners look back on the work that we do to improve that work, to modify that work for individual students, to differentiate it, and to really reflect on how we execute. So effective planning, intellectual engagement, and reflection are the three key levers towards developing an interdisciplinary or a transdisciplinary unit of study. These three pieces are the magnet for which this work takes place around. When I talk about feedback, we know when principals walk into teachers' classrooms or when colleagues walk into one another's lab classrooms, the goal is to provide feedback to move the practices forward. We want to take that same idea and think about it in terms of how we can improve our curricular opportunities for students. Meaning, whether, again, whether it's a grade team planning, whether it's a vertical team planning, either way, feedback is a key lever for developing and modifying curricular planning, right? So what are the benefits of feedback? Well, we know that when we talk about learning here, we're talking about learning about the tools that we use to practice pedagogy, our curriculum. So our learning around, and we also know that most teachers are not curricular experts, right? And so this feedback piece is super important because the learning that happens in the planning process, right, leads to better teaching, and it's most effectively when we're constantly giving concrete, actionable feedback on a regular basis to one another. It helps teachers understand and act on key levers. When we build it, not only it works better, but it helps to build a culture, a true culture in a school where there's respectful feedback, and it strengthens that culture and it makes it stronger because we're talking to each other honestly about what works best. There are numerous ways to approach feedback. Now, people have different styles, different demeanors, different ways, but it's important to know how the practitioners respond. So it's an important two-way street, right? But effective feedback always includes these qualities. It's always specific and evidence-based, low inference evidence. It's not an opinion. We're giving feedback. This is what I saw. We don't need to give a detailed narrative. The analysis and the interpretation can be justified by the evidence together. We come to conclusions together, especially as we're building curriculum. Okay. We need our feedback to be actionable. Okay. We need it to be selective. We don't want to have tons of feedback. We want to prioritize one or two important practices in our planning that will improve student learning. For example, the assessments that we have are not rigorous enough. They don't sit on a high enough level of depth of knowledge. They're asking kids more recall questions than we need. We need more project-based work for this. That's right. That's an important priority area in the plan. So we want to be selective. We want it to be timely and time-bound. In other words, it needs to be something that people can do. So when we're planning, and again, it needs to have a degree of importance. If I'm providing feedback on something, I expect to see feedback on it, right? And so if we're holding one another to the highest standard, then we have to make sure that this is important when we give feedback. So making it selective and actionable are key. Okay. We're giving feedback here amongst ourselves, not teacher to student, not principal to teacher, not superintendent to principal, right? This is more about giving feedback amongst ourselves as a planning team. Again, whether that team is vertical or on a specific grade level, whatever it might be, right? Everybody's experience as adult learners is different. So the differences include, as people, their self-concept. As people mature in the practice, their self-concept moves from one of being dependent to one of being self-directed. So they're able to take ownership of the work that they're contributing to the planning process, right? If someone on the team's job is to develop the formative assessments, for instance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, then they need to, be able to work on that particular piece. We have experience. right? As people mature, they accumulate in this work, they accumulate a growing reservoir of experience. We know from practice where things fit in a curriculum. We know this text won't work. We know this text might work with a group of kids. We know we might need to use 3 texts or 5 texts. We might need to include 3 scaffolded assessments, maybe 2. It depends. Our experience tells us. And we have to provide feedback for the newer teachers in our group, maybe some of the veteran teachers, etc. Everybody in the group needs to have readiness to learn and be oriented to learning and have the motivation to learn. These things, these items, these differences in ourselves provide the lever by which we can effectively plan. Not only effectively plan, but make sure that we're developing that intellectual engagement that we're talking about. And by doing this, we're attending to the reflective nature of the planning process. Right? So again, we talked about all this. I kind of just talked about this, so I'm not going to read it to you, but this talks a little bit about me, again, prioritizing the areas of practice that are going to have the greatest impact. What in our planning works best for students? And what is the student data throughout telling us? Right? So I want you guys to take a moment. I'm going to pipe down for a moment, and I want you to take a second. And I want you to spend a minute taking a look at feedback in your world and how it pertains to the planning process. And jot down you jot down in the chat, right, or in any notebook you might have, any major points that resonate with you. I'm going to be quiet and take a look at, I'll have, and Miss Kelly will take a look at the chat and surface any good things that we have. So go ahead and take a moment to reflect. Anything in the chat, Sally Kelly?
I'm checking right now.
I can see it.
I just wanna...
Don't be shy. We need your input.
Again, and you don't have to, we have a limited amount of time, so we're not going to sit here and wait. But if you'd like to continue, to reflect, you can please put your notes in here. But the idea is, what role does feedback play in your work, in particular in your planning work? Because it's really important that we, zoom in on the feedback component, because when we do, we can start to think about the tools that we need to plan with, right? And so, in order to plan effectively and provide feedback at the same time while we're planning, we need a tool, right? And so here's a good looking tool. And this tool allows us to break the unit, any that we're going to design, into chunks, right? So when we look at the chunks, we see we have a unit central driver. In this blank arrow, what's driving our unit of study? This is where the phenomenon would be. This is where the essential question would be. What are the texts? Now, text is a tricky word these days. Text can mean anything. Text can mean audio, can mean video, can mean traditional text, can mean articles, can be excerpts. What is the text that's going to support student engagement with this essential question that's driving our thinking, driving our work? And what are the assessments that we're going to use? When and where are we going to use them? What are we going to assess and how is it tied to the Common Core Learning Standards and the NGSS? So just like we had 3 components towards sort of looking at how we plan as a whole, we have 3 key components to the actual plan itself, the actual unit plan itself, which is the central driver, which could be, again, the phenomena or an essential question, the text that supports our study. Again, text can be a variety of different things. And again, how are we assessing? How do we know? How are we going to find out that students do or do not know what we need them to know? Once
And
we have,
David, sorry, there was a question about, do you need to be an expert in curriculum to provide feedback to other colleagues?
no, you do not. What you need to be an expert in is understanding the content. Thank you for that question, because that's a really important piece. When we're talking about designing interdisciplinary units of study, which we're going to dive into in a moment, right? We want to think about how are we going to anchor this study, right? We're going to anchor it in the content itself. So where you really need to be an expert, right, is in content. And when we're talking about cross-curricular, we're talking about multiple team members bringing multiple lenses of expertise and content. For example, I'll give you a little preview. We're going to talk about one of the assessments we're going to see as a model, asks students to write a persuasive piece to sell this piece of technology that they're going to create, right? And so in order to contribute to the planning process, you need to be an expert in what that persuasive essay or that argumentative essay is going to look like, right? As it becomes fleshed out into lesson plan formats. So no, you don't have to be an expert curriculum person to provide feedback to the planning process, right? Remember, the wall that gets broken down between curriculum experts and teachers is the content, is the content versus the organization. So you really need the expertise in the content to drive the organization. I think that should answer that question. Okay, you'll let me know if there's a second level
No,
question.
thank you.
That. Yeah, sure, no problem. Right. So what's really cool though is nowadays, here's the thing, and for all the teachers on the line or watching, okay, we know that we are not curriculum experts. Some of us are really good at it. Some of us are, but we were trained to teach, right? And so the time that we're going to spend on planning is time probably that we don't have all that much of. Okay, we have planning preparatory periods during the day. We know that teachers spend an enormous amount of time at night, on the weekends, planning for weeks in advance, etc. And we know now we have AI. So let's take a look at how we can use AI to help put a dent in the research that says we spend too much time on sort of simple tasks that we don't need to anymore because of the technology, right? So there are tons of tools out there. We've got Poe. We've got Magic School, Conmingo for teachers through Microsoft, Google's Gemini, the most probably popular one of all, ChatGPT. So there's these 5 and several others as well. For our model today, we're going to use Poe because we find Poe to be sort of in the middle of all of them, has the biggest reach across what we need it to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out of this PowerPoint for a second. I'm going to reshare my screen. And I'm going to share Poe. Okay, can everybody see Poe? All right, so.
Not yet.
Not yet? What do you see on the screen right
Blank screen.
now?
Now we see it.
Beautiful. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to create a unit of study, right? So that's what I know I want to do. All right, so we'll go here and I'm going to say, I need you to create a STEAM integrated unit of study. It is based on the phenomena of sound waves making music and resonating with humans. It should align to the following NGSS standards. I make a list now, as you can see here. Should probably put a little space here, right? And I ask it to develop me this unit. So I picked 4 different standards, all the sound standards. And sounds great. Let's create a STEAM integrated unit of study focused on the phenomena of sound waves and their connection. Look at this. So now I have to read this. Can't just print out what AI produces, right? We know that AI hallucinates. We know that sometimes it adds things that it didn't mean to add. So it's not perfect, but it certainly cut down an enormous amount of time of helping me organize the standards. Okay. As the unit culminating in the project here, has the literacy standards and math standards. Look at that. I didn't even have to run across 6 different platforms to find them. Comes up with a series of essential questions. What are the key principles and properties of sound waves? How do the sound waves interact, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I like this. Okay. Let's see here. The key principles and properties of sound waves. How do sound waves interact with different materials? So it's got tons of driving pieces here. Content and skills, instructional activities, and now that doesn't seem like a full unit of study for me. That seems like an idea. Now, what can I say here? Also, I would like the students to build a record player for the culminating assessment. Sorry about the typos, right? Important. Culminating assessment. Please include that. Absolutely. Let's incorporate the design. So I'm having now a conversation. Still, right? Design and build a record player. Here are the standards. Okay, sketch a design, build a model, test and troubleshoot, analog versus digital. Oh, look at this, a persuasive presentation. Can you flesh out the writing assignment for the persuasive bit? Sure, let's dive deeper. Students will do research. So I can see I'm building out my unit of study just by asking AI to help me extrapolate, right? Highlight unique qualities. So it's right now, one thing I didn't notice in here was the kind of skipped out on my engineering standards. So I'm going to say, what engineering standards would align with this task? Yeah, look at that. Even if it's a typo, it still works, no problem, right? So it has the ITEEA standards for technological literacy. So if you haven't gotten the idea already, right, what I'm able to do here is I'm able to have a conversation, an articulate conversation with AI that this would have taken me I taught for years, would have taken me days to do, if not hours, done in less than 7 to 8 minutes. But it's not done. Right, I still need to go through this and actively communicate with it to break it out and then, remember, we can't just print this out, hand it out to everybody, and there's our unit plan. We have to organize it. We have to make it, as part of our school and so forth, right? So we have formats that we use in schools. We have universal formats, et cetera. This stuff is going to get chunked out into something another tool that we're going to provide and share with you shortly. But really, this is the key. AI is giving me feedback. I'm giving AI feedback. When I present this work with my group, we're giving this work more feedback. We're coming back into this and redesigning, rehoning what we want to do, right?
So David, there was this question asked, can we trust artificial intelligence in our classroom?
So the answer to that question is you can trust it as much as you can trust the internet. So if you use Google, you can trust Google for certain things, but not all things. So I used the term before, I mentioned that AI sometimes hallucinates. So no, you can't always trust it, but you can trust yourself. Right. So you'll note I often have to dig in and ask it more specific questions. So you can't, like what I said at the very beginning was, and thank you, Sal, is that you can't just go into AI, the chatbots, and you can't just say, plan me a unit. And then take what you have and pass that off as a unit. Curricula is a process. It's not an event. Right. And so what I mean by that is all these programs that districts use and schools use, whether it be X Science or X Math or whatever it might be, those were built for mass audiences. We still have to take those pieces and customize them for our populations, right? So curricula is a process, right? And so you have to take the same thing here. You have to you're feeding it with what you want. It's spitting out what you want, but you have to then take what you have and hone it and shape it and put it into some kind of order. So that's a really good question because it's going to lead us to, and I'm actually going to jump ahead a little bit and kind of reorder the presentation based on that question. But what I'm going to share with you is we're going to jump right to. So you take all this information, and in order to sort of process it, right, you need to chunk it. And you need to chunk it in ways that are organizationally sound to a school, right? So you chunk it in this way. You chunk it by creating the unit, topic, and length, and you create a template, right? Here's a suggested integrated STEM unit plan template that you'll take away from this presentation with you, okay? That has the unit, topic, and length. It has a space for the standards, so you would pull the standards and put them in here. You would organize, and as you're doing this chunking and organizing and actual planning, you're finding the hallucinations. You're finding the mistakes. You're finding the places where it's just superficial and you need to dig deeper. So you can trust it for the information that it provides you, but you need to take that information that it provides you and shape that information to meet the goals that you have as a group, right? So what it does is and again, it's not always accurate. If you ask it 2 + 2, it's going to tell you 4. But if you ask it to do a more complex piece, like design an 8-week unit of study based on certain principles, and then you dive into those principles, it can do that, but you need to make sure that it's got all of them. It's got them in the right phrasing. You have to go back in and check. So that's a really important and good question. Thank you for asking, and thanks for pointing that out, Sal. Right? And I'm not going to read all these pieces, but before I do anything further, how you interact with the AI is the most important piece in the planning process. As you're putting together these key components of a STEM integrated unit, you have to prompt AI very, very specifically. And you'll find this course in almost every university now, okay? There's prompt engineering courses online, but prompt engineering is a new literacy. It is a key new literacy in terms of utilizing AI to become more efficient at what we do and spend the real time that we have, as limited as it is, with actual kids executing, right? So if you have good prompt engineering skills and you build your literacy there, AI will become way more accurate, right? And especially as time goes, right? Remember I said before, exponentially. Well, every time you use a chatbot, it improves. Every time you personally use it, what you prompt it with and what you ask it helps it to improve. So you have to define the ask. You have to clearly articulate what you want help with and what kind of response you're looking for. Excuse me. You have to use relevant keywords and phrases. Write out the prompt beforehand, craft it, put it in the chatbot afterwards. Then, if we go out, I'm going to go back out to Poe. Okay. And show you again, take a look at that first prompt, right? Look how long this prompt is, right? It's this chunky. I need you to create a STEAM integrated unit, right? I put in a clarifying statement. So look, this is not like Googling the Battle of 1812, right? Or Googling how do sound waves work. That's going to give you 62 web pages that you got to go through, et cetera. This really helps me organize based on how I want to organize. So the more specific you are with your prompt engineering, the better your results will be. And what you have to do is something called prompt priming, right? So like, for example, as I was saying, I could just say, tell me about the War of 1812, or where should I go on my next vacation? I want AI to help me plan my next vacation. Where should I go? Well, you're going to get a billion answers, some which may align to what you want, some which may not, right? But you have to prime it. So you have to prompt prime. Prompt priming means to provide the initial input that guides the model toward generating the most useful response. So where should I go on my next vacation with priming sounds like this. I'm interested in traveling with my family on vacation. Ideally, we want a tropical destination that offers access to a beach. We would like direct flights from LA and have allocated a budget of X, right? So much like I did here, I need you to create a STEAM integrated unit of study, et cetera, et cetera. You have to really prime your prompts to drive forward what you want. Once you provide the key prompt, you can then begin to ask it questions like I do, right? Right. Let's see. I can even say here, can you put this unit into a planner? Let's see what it does. Right? Sure, here's a structured planner, right? So look at this. So in some of these chatbots, you could actually upload the Word document. So now I can take this out and chunk it in my schools or my district's preferred methodology. Look at this, week 3, week 4. You can take it a step further, and teachers, and this is where, again, the school districts all differ and the ethics need to be worked out. But in our summer institute down in Houston, we talked a lot about this, is you can save, and the amount of time and energy it will save and provide teachers with is incredible. But you can then use the tool to plot out lessons. And again, you still have to do the work. But AI will allow you, with proper prompt engineering and proper prompt priming, will allow you to develop and take those components and really chunk them out into an amazing planner, right? Again, I'm going to share. Right. It's got all the components. It's got all the components. The academic and essential skills, the content. This is where you need the expertise as teachers. But this now should bridge the gap between planning and executing pedagogy, right? We always say that while teachers aren't curriculum experts, they still are the users of that tool. Anybody who uses a specific tool should know how to use that tool, right? I don't buy a drill without knowing how to use a drill, right? So you have to learn, and this will now shorten the gap so tremendously by being able to use AI to help plan. And it'll help the user really be able to spend the time honing their craft and executing these plans, right? Where there's room for the assessments here, the initial assessment, the formative assessment, the final performance task, right? The learning plan and activities, so this is an important piece right here. I can say I need a week's worth of learning plan and activities. We'll go back out a second to the poem. We'll plot. So this is what I'm talking about. We can check this chunk and we can take this whole chunk out and use AI to cut back our time to plan. And then we can present that plan to the team. Team can mark it up, do editing, do revising, make it perfect for us. What are going to be the student, here's another question I might want to ask here, right? Can you insert, I'm sorry, I'm swap back. Right. So as you can see, can you insert a week's worth of lessons here, each with a plan? Watch how fast this happens. Now so why did I say at the beginning of this session that feedback is the most critical layer, right? This is the connector, right? In planning, if I'm not constantly providing feedback, the reason why we don't do, the reason why we go out and we buy curricula or programs is because it saves us time. We have the stuff. But you still have to take that stuff. You still have to take that package. You still have to unpack it for your students. You still have to unpack it for your new teachers, for your veteran teachers that have been using something different for a long time, right? This tool and the organizing tool allow us to become the hands-on people that we need to be with our tools. And AI really, look at this. I got days of lessons here. They're gonna have to take this is not enough. This isn't a lesson plan, right? This wouldn't be a successful lesson plan in my building. This wouldn't be good planning on a teacher's behalf in my building. So I would say, you know, how I could just take it here. Make each lesson more detailed, right? This is an example of an unprimed prompt. That's why I'm not getting what I want. You know, this one's a little bit better, but it's still not really where I want it, right? I want the assessment spelled out. I want differentiation. But again, my prompt is not allowing for that. This is an example of an unprimed prompt. Even with misspelling, it still understands. I always find that fascinating, right? So again, this levels the playing field to that earlier question. Go back to the PowerPoint and continue. Okay, so this tool has all of these components, right? It has the unit, topic, and length. It has the space for the standards, engineering, the big ideas and enduring understandings, essential questions, content, academic and essential skills. But it all started back here, right? Really, this is an entry tool for folks who aren't experts. What are the three pieces? The central driver, the texts that are going to support students' understanding, and the assessments that are going to help teachers drive changes in the instruction throughout the unit and help us understand what kids know and don't know. Right? And all of that plays out into this template. So I urge you, if you don't have one, to adopt this template. It's a very powerful way to organize learning experiences for students, in particular around the interdisciplinary, right? Where you have to keep track of all different kinds of standards, and you have to put together all different kinds of ideas and thinking, and you're joining people who are teaching in different disciplines in one space. Organization is vital. Feedback on that process is vital. And then finally, we just have to ask this question, right? Which is, how will we know they learned it? What is the assessment? How are we going to talk about student work? These are all the questions we still have to ask when we meet as a team. AI just helped us cut time in planning. We still have to execute. We still have to review the student work. We still have to use that student work to refine the way we attack the content. But we have to be expert in that content area.
So, David, there's another question. The person asked, they didn't see Poe, I didn't see Poe create a content that can be shared in classroom with students. So do you want to?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. That's a great question.
And when David is looking for this, all I want to say is that this is for actual teachers to develop this unit by prompting Poe. But also, this is what David is doing, and see how engaged he is. But the amount of work of time that we're cutting because of Poe is amazing. And you, as the teacher, can prompt Poe, which that is what David is doing right now, to get exactly what you want out of that question. So go ahead.
So you see my prompt? So I need you, sorry. I need you to create a quiz on sound waves for level 1 DOK assessment 1 week into the unit. I would take this, put it in a Word, print it out, et cetera, et cetera. That's really basic, right? That's level one. That's like 1 week into the unit, I need that quick worksheet to find out. I can put, so I think, is that what you were talking about? Right, so you can use it to create anything you want, right? I can say,
And I would also just add, to answer that question as well, some of those other AI websites that we shared also have some very specific related materials that could be used for the classroom. So again, when we're talking about this today, this is something that we're looking for in terms of the teacher to conduct that unit planning across the content areas. This can get into the lesson planning. And then if you're looking for more specific activities, there's a lot that's created in those other websites, such as Khan Amigo. That's a great website that has lots of different activities. And even Poe, there's a variety of other options, Magic School too. So this is just one example of how we're using AI, but there's lots of other options as well too.
yeah. There's a tons of ways. So Magic School gets even deeper and has tools built in. So there's a lot. The point is that we know that the research tells us that we spend an awful lot of time on this work, right? And if this work is really just kind of nuts and bolts of putting together, a plan, then we can use the tool to have the plan developed quickly and then execute it so we can really understand maybe problems of practice or learner-centered problems that are happening around the content, so we can refine our pedagogy. We can ask better questions, right? So it really, really is helpful. That's, to me, is the key lever for us as teachers, right? Student, you can print, print like Kelly was saying, you can print out worksheets, you can print out any kind of tools for kids, but kids can go in here. The kids are going in here already and doing this. Kids are going in here already and they're putting in prompts and asking it to write essays. They're not necessarily understanding that it hallucinates and that you need to be a prompt engineer and that you need to prime your prompts. And they might just, I know, for example, my son is a freshman in college, and they're really grilling him on the ethics of using AI and how it works. And it's very, so students are using this, so we need to be able to use it with them, alongside of them, and also for us to elevate our game, to help us execute better. But at the end of the day, right, we know that we can put all the components together, build a unit, build lesson plans, but we still have to ask the question at the end: how will we know that they learned it? The assessment is critical. Where you build these project-based learning performance tasks, quizzes, whatever it might be, where is the time and space for that stuff, right? Where is it going to take place in the unit of study, right? And so just to take that question a little deeper, what you really, again, some of them allow you to develop a worksheet. Some, they mostly, because of copyright or whatever, you generally have to copy and paste it into a Word document, which is what you saw Poe tell me, right? So just to further extrapolate on that question, right? So again, how will we know they learned it? Our essential question is, how do we prepare and design instruction, and then how do we teach it, right? Okay. Here's the essential question that we had. How, here's an example of how this would be filled out, right? Okay. How, so that key driver would be, how is sound produced and transmitted, and how can it resonate with humans through music? Some of the big ideas and enduring understandings are vibration and sound production, wave properties, transmission of sound, digital versus analog signals. Choosing this topic, by the way, was just something to show sort of how we can create intellectual engagement around topics using content that is accessible for our, today's students. There are many free resources that you can find project-based learning examples out there to build these things around, right? At the end of the day, you really want to try to build your units of study around the NGSS, especially the cross-curricular pieces inclusive of math and science, like we talked about in the last webinar, right? How we're looking at all the different standards. This is a really good organizing principle. Using the phenomena and the project-based learning methodology is a really good organizing principle for designing and taking all those components that we looked at for an interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary unit of study. Right, this is another great idea that you can use. Right, it shows you. I mean, there's so many resources out there to help you. So going back to, do I trust AI? You don't have to trust AI. You can just use AI to do the hard work for you, right? You don't need to it doesn't need to do the thinking for you. Quite frankly, it can't do the thinking for you. It doesn't think for itself. You have to prompt it. So really, you have to do the thinking. We have to do the thinking. So it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that like it's a cheat, right? It's in fact a giant misnomer. We know that when we plan, we want to work backwards. What am I going to use to determine what they've learned? What are the tasks? What are the standards they're assessing? What are the enduring understandings? Where do I need to be an expert? What is the content? What are the academic essential skills? When you define the assessment, define it in deliverable terms, not just a general statement of what we want them to know and do anymore. We need the nitty gritty. We want them to write an argument to show that they can create claims and support them with evidence, right? We know that. We know that's what we want. We want to be able to spell it out. So we have to, when we build out our units of study, that's an area where we really need to be explicit. I'll go back and I'll show you the one that we created. And I might need to have AI make it more explicit. Right? So now you got to go to work. Right? Now you got to use your scope and sequence. People have different ones across different states and countries of the science curricula. The unit, the areas that they want you to focus on in your given state or country or city. Okay, we will determine the unit you'll begin to develop together. Because we're going to ask you, I know Sal, but when I'm finished talking here, Sal's going to leave you with a little bit of a homework assignment between now and the next time we meet. Right? You want to be able to identify the standards that you want to work with in this model unit that you're going to create, because we want you to create a model unit or a unit refine a unit you've been working on. Evaluate and choose the texts that you're using to drive the student inquiry. In math, the tasks that you ask generally are the text. So you don't have to go looking for math books or math articles. The tasks that you use in math are usually the text. Don't reinvent the wheel. Use tasks that you have. Use the suggested template that we provided you to design the experiences, and begin to map the arc of the unit in terms of lessons, kind of like AI was doing. Week 1, day 2, week 1, week 3, day 4, etc. And most importantly, and AI really, this is where AI for me is the difference maker, is it really allows you to think about access to this unit for all your students. Because all you have to do is ask it, please differentiate this unit for the following types of students you might have in your district or your school or your classroom. Right? So your mission is to work with your interdisciplinary team and to design, maybe not your first, but an integrated STEM unit based around a phenomenon. In your planning teams, we want you to utilize the planning template again. You need standards, access to supporting text, your creativity, and your content knowledge. Again, that's where you need to be an expert. And again, if you have your own unit design template, make sure it has the components that were in there. So your goal is to walk away from here and to start planning a unit and to bring it back to us for feedback. Because again, feedback is the key piece in the loop, right? There's a checklist in the PowerPoint that you can help guide you in your work. There's coaching protocols from Heidi Hayes Jacobs in developing quality curriculum maps that we've included here. You'll find that on the internet as well. Nice link.
And David, real quickly, they could also not find it in the web, they could ask AI when they're developing the unit to include those principles.
That's correct. That's exactly right. There are some resources that are here that you can utilize.
And you can also ask AI for them.
That's right. All in AI or this PowerPoint. And, you know, with that, this is a slide where you have our emails. We say thank you for your time. But again, I'm going to go back out to Poe and just sort of, again, sort of show you. It even gives you a rubric, right? Again, it's just about using it. What do we want to ask it, Sal?
Can you provide resources that support the unit, or where your sources came
That's it, I
from?
got it. Right.
Yeah.
Can you provide texts to support the ELA portion of this disciplinary unit? Right? I can even ask it, but it might have copyright. Can you link me to these texts? Might have copyright infringements, but again, I can go search for them. I can look them up in a catalog, right? See, shows me it probably can't because of copyright, but again, I can use this literally for everything. So I can take all of this stuff and then copy and paste it into our template, right? So with that, our hour's about up, but I want to spare the last 5 minutes, please, for any questions or any more questions or thoughts or, just opinions or anything you'd like to share with the group.
And yes, I want to thank everyone for joining as well. And as I said, we have this recorded. We will be sharing it. We also will be sharing the slides so that you'll have that information in front of you. But if there's ever any additional resources or information that you need, just please don't hesitate to reach out. I've also added in the next webinar using AI in pedagogy, where we're going to even go deeper around in these AI tools for planning, engaging students, questioning techniques. So that question that actually came out about for the students, this will even go deeper.
Yes.
There was a question that also came out about how we can incorporate moral education in children, that all human beings around the world belong to a common divinity by the help of AI.
And I just want to answer that by also, Asim, if you ask AI, you prompt it, and once you get the first response, you read it, you do then prompt it to get deeper. And one thing that you should know about AI, the more you prompt it, the more it becomes used to your persona, and it becomes more alike what you're thinking. And that's the important tool of AI. As David mentioned, we make it what we want it to be. It becomes personal, it becomes a coach, it becomes a partner, but you have to make sure that it doesn't hallucinate. And that's the importance of the educators. We need to be in control and don't take the first response. That's going to be it. No, we have to prompt it to become like the educator that's asking the question.
You have to read it.
Yes.
Yeah, and then to take that a little bit further, right, Asim, I think, you've given yourself a homework assignment. How can you build a unit of study, right? This is a unit of study in itself. You've asked a key essential question. How can we incorporate more education in children? Basically is, how can we incorporate the idea that all human beings belong to a common divinity? That's a driving question. That is a unit of study. And how can you help use AI to help create that unit of study? Same way we just showed you, right? What are the texts that we want to use? What texts link directly? What age level are we talking about? So like you can use AI to break down that essential question and using the template that we shared, really design a unit of study. So it sounds like that's a great homework assignment for you to bring back to the next time.
And using the template, you could ask, it becomes an integrated unit of study. You could incorporate social studies, history.
Right.
You could incorporate many literacy, of course, mathematics has something of importance, the science behind it. So there's a lot of great stuff we can do, but what we wanted to show you is we developed a unit with you in less than 20 minutes. Literally, that's what David took to get prompted to the point that then we could start work. And as David mentioned, I'm here to give you a homework assignment. So in the learning procedures section of the template, I would like for you, when you develop your unit, not only get the learning process, but within that, develop lesson plans for each of the unit of the process, like David prompted to give them lesson plans for week 1. They gave them some, but now it's our job as educator to prompt it more to connect to the work that we're doing. So before, when we worked with our schools, since the pandemic, 2020, this process used to take us approximately, to complete the whole thing, 8 weeks of study, 8 weeks to get to developing the unit, the integrated unit. Now, as you notice, it only took us less than an hour. So the importance of this webinar is for you to know now time does not become a factor or an excuse. Now we have tools that can help us expedite. So on our next webinar on December, we are going to be showing you how administrators and lead teachers and teachers can observe each other and provide with the partnership of AI, provide actionable feedback to improve our pedagogy. That's what these 3 webinars were about. First, we had to understand the next generation. Then we had to show you of science standards. Then we had to show you how quickly we could develop an integrated STEM unit. Now what we're going to do is, now that we created this, now we're going to go and observe the delivery. And that's the engagement, the intellectual engagement. How are teachers delivering these lessons that are engaging students in that intellectual process that will challenge their thinking, that brings out discourse, that gets them to talk about it, and eventually they take ownership of their learning. That's where we're heading with this. So the next webinar is going to be crucial. It's going to tie in all 3, but for supervisors, it's really important for you to be on. Teachers that are working in teams, extremely important to enhance your practice as partners. And I'm looking forward to that. David?
Yes, very much. Cannot wait. Like Sal said and Kelly said, we're really going to dive deeply into sort of how, again, in all the research that I've been doing and thinking about these tools as they pertain to these key levers of our work, which is planning, effective intellectual engagement and reflection. I can't help but think that we need to spend time in really thinking about how these tools can best move us forward. So I can't wait till the next time.
Kelly?
Yes, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us. We do look forward to it. Please do not hesitate to reach out with any questions that you have. As I said, I'll be following up, sending you the video within the next day or two. But again, please sign up for our next webinar. I put it in the chat box, but I'll also be sending everybody a reminder as well. And I just want to thank everyone for spending time. So good evening, good morning, and just have a wonderful day. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, David.